Hi, I'm Stefan, the BMW DIY guy, and do you want to have a remote start install into your Mini Cooper? I'll show you how you can do it. All right, guys, so let's talk about this project a little bit before we do it and the reasons why you can want to do the same thing in your car. Now, the install itself here with this remote start from Bimmertech is really not hard, and it only takes a few simple tools as you see through this process. Now, also, Bimmertech has a really good guide, and I highly suggest you print it out and have it handy as you go through this. But I find this video is really helpful so you can actually visibly see all these different things that we're doing and you get a good explanation. This is one of those projects that isn't very hard, but you have to make sure that you do it properly because the way you're changing some of the pins on the wiring on how your car works. So you need to make sure to do it right. Okay? So one of the very first things we're going to do is actually unplug the battery, and let me show you how to do that. All right, guys, so one of the very first things you want to do is go ahead and take off this cover. You've got the typical little twist locks where you quarter turn them, and then you've got these plastic hat nuts that sit right on top. You'll get this cover that will come up and off, and you'll be able to see the ground post on your battery. That is usually a 10mm nut, so go ahead and just loosen the nut, pull your ground post off, and tuck it down and away. Now make sure it's tucked down and not in a place where it can come back up and touch contact, because the module that we're going to be getting into in the footwell, we do not want to have power applied while we do the work that we're doing, okay? So go ahead and disconnect your battery, tuck it down, and then we're going to go over to the passenger side and start pulling some plastics off. All right, guys, so the module we want to get to is behind your kick panel here. So we're going to want to pull the door trim. Now, really the easiest way to do this is just to get your fingers underneath it and lift. There's a series of little snaps underneath, and half the time the pins stay behind, which in this case, they absolutely did. So these plastic pins we're going to take out when we're done, when we reinstall this. We'll take all these out with a pair of pliers and put them back on this trim when we put it back into place. But for now, they're completely fine. So go ahead and take the trim and go ahead and set it aside. Now, you've got your side kick panel here, which we're going to do the same thing. Just get your fingers underneath it and start to pry just like that, and we will get this out. And it has a whole series of clips on the back of it. This is a good time that if you have a broken clip, which we don't in this case, which is great, but if you do have one clip that gets left behind, you can see 1, 2, 3. Make sure to pull the extra clip out, so when this goes back into place, you can just snap it in really easily. Okay, so go ahead and take these off and set it aside, and then we're going to be talking about this module right here. Everything we're going to do is all right here. Now, the nice thing is here in the Mini Cooper, this is a lot easier to get to. The carpet's not in the way, so that's really useful. Okay, so let me rearrange my camera a little bit, and we're going to start pulling the plugs. All right, so like I said, this really only takes a few simple tools that you can see laid out. I've got a pair of pliers to pull a fuse here in a second. I've got a pick tool that I'm going to be using as we pull the pins out of a number of these plugs. So as we look at this block, you see a whole series of these large plugs that go into place. We're going to be pulling very specific plugs out and swapping pins out. So let me grab my wiring harness here as an example, and I'll take you through each one as we go. But basically what you're going to be doing is taking the existing plug out, pulling out specific pins and replacing them in place with this harness for your remote start. And then the existing cables will go into this join connection so to maintain the connectivity through the plug. So all really simple, really straightforward. I'll show you on several of this now as we walk through the guide. We're going to do it a bunch of times, and you'll get good as you do this. So I'll explain the first one kind of in greater detail and then summarize as we get into the later plugs. Now, the one other thing, the guide has you install this fuse first. I find that you can, but because you pull one of the plugs, the fuse is going to go in. When you look at this row of little fuses down here, you'll see on the left-hand side, which is the motor side, this row at the very bottom right here is a 20. We're going to pull this 20 out, and this fuse is going to go in place, into its place. It's going to insert in this fashion with this fuse standing upwards. But what I find with the plug is that sometimes as we get to one of these plugs on this side, that this fuse going in here gets in the way, and I've even knocked the plug back out. So you can do it first. Just like I'm saying, you pull out that 20 fuse, it goes into the slot right here. So take that 20 fuse and slot it in here right on top of the plug and insert this into its place. But I actually tend to save this to last so I don't pull the plug back out or don't have a cable length problem as I get to these plugs out here on the outer side. Okay, so your choice. You can either put that in first or I'll put it in last like I'm going to, and I'll show you. So let's identify which one of the right plugs we're going to pull out first. I'm going to show you how to pull it out. Then we're going to pull the shell off. I'm going to start replacing pins. All right, so now it's just rinse and repeat as we go through. So I'm gonna move through these a little bit faster as we go because the process is very similar. But our next plug is 1, 2, 3. In this case, it's the white plug, this big block. Don't always assume that the colors are the same. They usually are because BMW and Mini are very similar that way. But just in case, it's one, counting from the engine side, 1, 2, 3. Same thing, depress the little tab, rock the horse collar back, the plug comes out, and then grab your pick tool, unlock the little locking tabs that are on those little fingers that keep the plugs in the cover, just like that. Bang, comes off. Okay, so then we've got our wiring block again. You just take it, slide it apart so we can get to it, just like that. Now in this case, we're looking for pins 45 and 49. So we're gonna look really closely. We're gonna find our little embossed pin numbers. So as we look at this, we should be in this gray block again. It looks like at the very end, I'm going to count it correctly as we go through, but we should be in this gray block. And what we're looking for is gray and white. So pins 45 and 49, and they should be gray and white. So as we look at this, so if I'm counting correctly, so this should be, looks like 54, 53, 52, 51, 50, 49. So 49 should be white, so it should be this guy right here. As we look at that, does that match? So we look at 45 and 49, that should be white. Okay, so that is our pin right there. So we're gonna wanna pull 45 and 49, we're gonna do the same thing, and we're going to be matching, in this case, with the blue wiring harness. Okay, so when we pull, we're gonna pull 49 first. 49 is white, so that's gonna be the dark blue with the black stripe. So again, we look at our wiring harness, you can see you have a solid blue and you have a blue with a black stripe. So go ahead and replace both of these pins. I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. We'll put the cover back on and we'll snap it back into place. All right, so as you can see, I've jumped the new wiring harness into the block right here. And I've brought the existing OEM wires down into the plug. You make sure, again, that you orient them properly. So the blue with black goes to white. The blue, solid blue, goes to gray. Again, you'll pull the end of the plug out, you lift that locking plate, snap the new wires in, snap down the plug and snap the plug into place. Everything clicks, everything's in nice and solid. So the new wiring harness is into the block, the existing OEM wires are into the jump, so that's good to go. So then all you have to do is just put this plug block back together. So again, take the two and slide them back together, just like that. And take your plug cover, which goes that way, just walk it right back into place, just like that. And again, make sure that your wiring install is nice and clean. It's not tangled around anything. It's not making a mess anywhere, right? Because you don't want these things to be all wrapped up together and have tension on the wires. Walk your horse collar back down. Walk the plug up to the block. It presses in. You can feel the horse collar start to come back. Snap the horse collar down. There you go. Good to go. We've only got a couple of left to do, okay? So now we've got the purple and gray, and we also have a brown ground, which we'll get to in a second. So we're gonna move plugs. Let me show you that next plug. Okay, you should be getting really good at this now. So in this case, we've got the gray and the purple. Now the gray is going to go to one block and the purple is going to go to another. So we've got two different blocks we're going to pull apart. So the very first one we're going to pull is in this bottom row. So again, counting from the engine side, 1, 2, 3. So it's this black plug right here. They're both black, but it's the black with the white collar, but it's 1, 2, 3. It's the third plug. So same thing, undo the horse collar. And this one is really stubborn. So this one is a little bit stiffer. So it's a good example. So sometimes that little bump for the horse collar is really strong. So you just have to press on it a little bit more. There it is, to get that horse collar back. Good. Same thing. Pull the cover off, find pin 22 in this case, and the gray wire. So swap in the gray wire, bring out the existing wire, pin 22, and put it into the gray wire position on your jumper. And then we're going to move on to the next plug. Okay, so I will show this and then we'll move on and we'll do the next plug as we split across plugs. All right, so now that this is done and you put it all back together, and as you can see the gray wire, you're going to pull out, you put the gray wire in place, and here's the blue wire that I already have into the jump connection all ready to go. Like I said, you get good at this after a while. So the next block right here is this closest one to the door on the bottom row. Same thing, undo the horse collar, just pull this out of the block. And then we're looking for pin 30, which is a gray pin. So slide the cover off, find pin 30, replace it with your purple wire, and then put the gray, gray back into your plug and plug it all together. I'll show you what that looks like when it's done. All right, guys, so let me just jump ahead a little bit because you should be getting really good at this by now. So we talked about this plug right here where we jumped in the gray wire for the blue. The next block is right here, is this end one. So 1, 2, 3, 4 on this bottom row, this one closest to the door. You're gonna pull that out and you're gonna jump in the purple wire. Now, the very last block you have to do is going to be counting from the engine side here on the bottom row, 1, 2. So this plug number 2, this white plug right here, you're gonna pull this out and you are looking for pin number 16. It's a black cable. Now, what I find on this block is that the numbers are a little bit hard to find. So I actually counted 1 through 15 on one side. You flip the plug over and you can find the first position away by itself is a single black line, and it's the only black line in the entire plug. So that is pin 16. So you swap out pin 16 for our brown ground, which is right here, which I've already swapped out, and I've put the existing OEM black wire into the jump connection right here. I've put it all back together. Keep in mind, this is a two-sided plug. One side's empty, so make sure you put it in on the right side, right? Put your cover back on, fit it back underneath the cabling. Now, this is why, if you remember at the very beginning of the video, I talked about how that fuse plug I try to put in last instead of first. This is the plug that usually tends to knock that out, because as you feed this back in and under to get it back into place right here, you're going to knock it out of position. So I'm going to install this in just a second. I'll show you what that looks like. But with the exception of plugging this back in, getting your fuse back in, and a ground, which I'll show you here in just a second, we're going to be all wired up. And then we're going to embed the remote into the control box, and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so we have the ground all installed, and now this is where I will differ from the guide a little bit. The guide says you can actually use a ground post that's up here up above, but if you actually peel the carpet back a little bit and look right there, there is a full body ground right there. And I find that easier to get to. So the very last connection that you need to install, you can see this little spade connection. So that is a 10mm nut. Just back that nut off a little bit, slide this into place and tighten it back down. And I find that as a more efficient way and a little bit cleaner wiring way to get that installed. Okay, so double check everything because what we're going to do is now we're going to put the key fob into the remote box, but we're really close to being done. So make sure that all of your wiring harnesses are correct. Everything's plugged in the right places. All of your cables are back into this block really nicely, but all the hard parts are done. All right, so let's get caught up here. So we've got our main control box that we're going to install in a second, but then you have the box that you're going to install the key fob. Now, we're going to end up at a little bit of a funky angle fitting this disc key fob into a rectangular box. It's going to be kind of tight, but I'll show you in a second. So you want to pull the cover off, go ahead and pull the key blade out, and then you pull the battery out. find the appropriate size battery. In this case, it's the small one that comes with the kit. And you've got this little ribbon cable that fits in. You lift the little lever, you slide the cable in and lock that lever back down. If you notice, the blue side is up. And then I always pull on it a little bit to make sure that it fits. Now, great idea. You could actually take the cable and fit it out through where the key blade was. And then we could actually put the cover back into place. So you go ahead and just take it. We're gonna fit the battery into place like that, but you can actually get it where the ribbon sits outside or fits through, and we can put the cover back on, which is pretty cool, right? It should be protected by the box, but it's a cool way of doing it. Now, we'll get the cover back on in a second, and we've got the ribbon cable out from where the key blade went. Now, you've got the circuit board here that's gonna fit inside the box. Same thing, you wanna lift the little lever. You're just gonna take the same blue cable, or same ribbon cable with the blue side up, fit it into place, and lock that cover down. Make sure that's snug and straight, which it is. Okay, so then you've got your covers here that you're just gonna fit this all back together. Now again, this is where we're gonna get interesting. Because if you notice, the disc is wider than the box itself. So we're gonna have to put it in at a little bit of an angle, and I fit it in from one side and kind of fit it down over the other. It is a very, very tight fit, as I put it in the wrong orientation, sorry. You can see with the plug with the cutout there. But it will fit. You end up with a little bit of a bulge in the plastic on one side. It's not a big deal. So just get it all fit back together, and then put your screws, these little teeny tiny Phillips screws, put them back in. And at that point, we can take both boxes over and put them back in the car. So get caught up to here, and then we're gonna get it installed. All right, guys, so now that the key fob is put away, and you can tell it was kind of a tight fit. So that long cable plugs into the key box, which plugs into your control box that I showed you a second ago. There's really only one place for it to go. And then go ahead and walk it back to the car. Your main control box plugs into your wiring harness, that big wide white plug. It only goes into one place. And then we can actually test the car. Now remember, you have to make sure that your battery is reconnected. So I've gone ahead and done that. Everything's all plugged in. Nothing's put away yet. And I'll show you that last and what that looks like. But this is your point to test. So you go ahead and get your key fob out with your car closed and locked, and you press the lock button 3 times. It works great. So, as you can tell, it started right up, so that means that your setup works perfectly. And then if you want to shut it down, you press the trunk button 3 times. And your car will turn off. So, there you go. Successful test. Everything's good to go. So let's go ahead and open back up. I'm going to show you tucking everything away. But at this point, it's just clean up and you're good to go. All right, so like I said, everything's all plugged in. Now, I'm a big fan of using a 3M double-sided adhesive. I've put probably too much on this one. But you just put this on, and then you find a good place to secure it. Now, this is all going to come down to where you really want it to be. The nice thing about the Minis is there's a lot of space back here where you can put it, and you've got a lot of cabling. You got a lot of cable length here to work with. So I'm actually going to put the main box back over here. There's a flat surface right up here. Now, you're not going to be able to see it on camera, but there's a flat surface, which is why I've got the 3M adhesive. I'm going to set that up. And then on the key fob box, I'm going to extend over. Obviously, we have a lot of cabling, so you're going to want it to tie all of the cabling up really nicely. But I'm going to get the boxes up first, and then we'll work to get the cabling. Once that's all done, I'll show you what that looks like. And then it's just a matter of just putting the plastics back on, which is going to be this side piece and then your door sill. Now, I mentioned earlier about these posts. I've already taken them out with a pair of pliers. I'll show you what it looks like because you just slide them back into the slots on the door sill guard, but really simple. Okay, so go ahead and use some 3M, get your boxes hidden away. We'll get this wrapped up. All right, guys, so everything is all tucked up and put away. Like I said, I found a great place to put the main box back there, back with 3M adhesive, so it will stick up into some of the vent assemblies. I've got the control box right here. I've got all my wiring harness all nice and neat and tucked away. I also found that a lot of this wiring harness could tuck back behind the carpet right here. So that makes it nice and neat and clean so it's out of the way. Make sure that you didn't pull on it on anything, and make sure that your fuse plug is still back in and everything is good to go. But at this point, you just put it all back together. So this side piece, remember, it has the 3 plastic posts, 1, 2, 3. If you left one behind like I did here, which I removed, you put it back into that cover, snap it back into place. You pull out the posts here on the side trim, put it back in the trim piece, and then generally you just line it back up, make sure that the plugs those posts or into the holes, and then just smack it down into place with your hand, and you're good to go. All right, y'all, so all done. Go ahead and clean up and put your tools away. And you can tell this is not a hard project at all. And it takes only a few simple tools. It really kind of just takes a pick tool primarily. So just make sure to follow all the steps really meticulously and you'll be successful as well. Hey, thank you to Bimmertech for making such a fantastic product that works so well. I love installing their stuff. It's really easy. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please make sure to click like and subscribe. It honestly makes a difference to my channel. It really does, and I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on my next project.